Live. Now we're live. Oh man.
Yay!
Still don't see it.
It'll take a little bit, but I'm pretty
I see
sure
it now.
I'm pretty sure we are live now.
We did it.
Okay. So everything that we had said previously, we just have to say again. That's
Just
really
do over.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we've got lots of people here. I was saying hi to everybody on the stream, and I have the recording to prove it. But I will go through and I will say hi. Thank you so much for sticking around. Dennis, Rebecca, Tim's wife, Gardenia, Kyla, Cynthia, Jenny. I'm seeing so many other names in there. Thank you so much for sticking around and figuring this out with us. We will rush through a couple of announcements just before we get started. I will say we've got a really good argument coming ahead when it comes to Dragon versus Dragon. But our first announcement comes from the contest. Emma, why don't you give us some contest details of what's going on with contesting, and I'll put some prizes on the screen here of what people can win.
Yeah, who doesn't like winning stuff? All right, so tonight you have the chance to win a signed copy of the novel, signed, of course, by the author, Shelley. You are also able to win a print from her. She has done some fantastic artwork you can see on the screen there. She is a dual threat in terms of writing, and she draws. So you could win both of those. To enter, you can share the pinned post at the top of our Facebook page, which has a link to this a lovely launch. That'll get you one entry. If you're on Twitter, you can also share our pinned post there. That'll get you a second entry. And a third entry will be gotten by you if you submit a question for our question and answer period later. So up to 3 entries can be yours, and you may win this whole pack. Good luck.
Okay. Oh, man. Well, we've got some other fun things that are going on this month at Mythos and Inc. We are an indie press, just a small press out of Winnipeg, Manitoba that's publishing science fiction and stories. Our motto is we publish stories for geeks by geeks. And the 4 of us on screen, at the very least, are pretty geeky. We've all got some geeky stuff going on. I mean, Shelley's got her book, which is pretty geeky. I've got my Lovecraft shirt on, and I think Allie's wearing dragon earrings, and Emma's got a dragon ring. So we're like set when it comes to fantasy stuff. But
this.
Many of us are also participating in National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, and we do have a Discord channel, which you can find at mythosinc.com, mythosinc.com/community. There, we've got lots of people that are joining in, and we're all participating. We have a chance to win prizes for things. We're encouraging one another. We're helping out one another. We're doing write-ins together and setting goals. We'd love for you to join us. Also, we love building into the writing community, and if you love building into the writing community as well, through things like podcasts and supporting in that vein of what we do to try and make really great geeky authors so we have more stories that we can talk about and love, well, we have something called a Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/Mythos and Inc. All right. Well, let's say goodbye to Allie and Emma. We're going to see them a little bit later today. Emma is running the chat. Make sure you say hi to Emma. Allie is our editor, and we're going to drag her back here for some editing type questions and what happened a little bit later. Thank you all for sticking around. I'm going to kick them out.
Bye.
Bye.
And now it's just the 2 of us. It's a showdown to the death. Well, sort of. Shelley Campbell is the author, and it is her night tonight, really. And so Canadian fantasy just got a lot darker. And it's been compared to George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones and Gene M. Owl's The Clan of the Cave Bear, Under the Lesser Moon, a grim, dark fantasy that turns the firstborn son trope on its head. And it's finally here. The book is written by Alberta-born author Shelley Campbell, who was inspired by ancient civilizations and what drove some of their more enduring practices. At a young age, Shelley wanted to be an airshow pilot or a pirate. Possibly a dragon, but definitely a writer and an artist. She's piloted a Cessna 172 through spins and stalls and sailed up the East Coast on a tall ship, mostly without projectile vomiting. Mostly? So that means you did. No, we don't need to get into that.
That's a story for another night.
That's in book 2. No, just kidding. In the end, Shelley found writing fantasy and drawing dragons to be much easier on the stomach, which is fair. Welcome here, pilot, pirate, and now dragon author, Shelley.
Thank you.
Shelly, yeah, I'm so excited that we're launching the book here tonight. I know we're gonna have a bit of a creation myth. We've got a video to present. We've got you doing some of the reading. We're gonna talk about the making of the book, get a little bit of behind the scenes, maybe some of the stuff that didn't quite make it into the book that might be kind of neat to know, and some of the process. But before we do all of that, we have been doing something on our social media, a dragon versus dragon showdown. Who would you rather have in your party? We've been doing this on our Mythos and Ink social media all month long. And it is culminating today. This is the final vote. This is the vote that matters today. There is no other vote across the entire earth that matters more than this dragon vote. Okay, so these are the finals. These were the two that were left up. Shelly, you're going to argue for one side. I'm going to argue for the other so that people can go and vote based on the arguments that we make here. You may argue for Toothless, but be careful because I am arguing for Dragonite. You're the guest. You get to go first. Go ahead there, Shelly. Why should Toothless be the one in your party and not Dragonite?
Well, Dragonite is supposed to be fast and kind-hearted, but Toothless is defined in the Dragon Manual as the unholy offspring of lightning and death itself. So that's pretty hard to beat that. He's an alpha dragon too, so if Dragonite wants to try anything, Toothless can control him. He can control the will of other dragons, and he's doing this all with a disabled tail. Plus, Dragonite's kind of cute, but Toothless is cuteness you don't mess with. He can go from like Toothless to Tooth and Claw in a heartbeat. I think he could use that as an his cuteness as leverage, get people to trust him, and have him wrapped around his little tail. He shoots plasma out of his mouth. I mean, it goes on and on.
That is a pretty good argument. I will admit that I've got my work cut out for. I will say though, like Dragonite is like big with little wings. You might think he's slow. No, he's like really fast. He's faster than the speed of sound. But what you're saying, like unholy offspring. He controls That's so alpha. Like Dragonite is altruistic. He saves humans from drowning. When ships are lost at sea, Dragonite is there. He's an environmentalist. If people threaten the environment, he is like all up in their business. And I gotta say, there's one angle you didn't take for Dragonite, and this is before 2016, you probably would have won. After 2016, now 1 billion people play Pokemon Go. There's no like Toothless Go or How to Train a Dragon Go.
There should be.
It's true. Probably would be pretty good. I don't know. I think you made a really strong case for Toothless, but we will see if Dragonite can maybe pull it off. Head to our social media and vote. Shelly, thank you for participating in that. I know you're a big fan of Toothless, and so that was a really easy one for you to argue.
My son's a really big Dragonite fan, so opposing corners.
Oh, man. Well, we have got something that is really special. So one of the things when it comes to a fantasy story, one of the most important things, at least what we think in Mythos and Ink, is the myth that happens, like the creation, the starting point. How did these things all kind of come together? Well, Shelly's book has one. And so what we did is we took that and we crafted it and we worked it with some of her art and we turned it into a creation myth video, which we're going to play for you now. Enjoy.
Nashira had 2 sons. She created them herself, the first out of soil and the second out of sky. She named them Pau and Yuri. Pau of earth hated Yuri of sky, who floated amongst the stars while Pau curled like a slug in the dirt. Nashira told him that although his little brother had the company of constellations, Pau could breathe life into soil. Pau was jealous. He shook his earth and spat poison about him so no life could grow. Yuri shined the light of his sun down, cooled Pau with his rain, and shaded him with his clouds. But Pau hated him and still would not let life grow. So Yuri took pity upon his elder brother. He told him that if he would allow life to grow, if he created a human whose feet walked on soil and fingers touched the sky, Yuri would travel through the fingers to the feet and take Pau's place in the ground. Then Pau could travel through the feet to the fingers and have Yuri's sky. Pau agreed. He grew a human woman on his soil, but when Yuri came through her fingers into the ground, Pau killed him. He pushed his brother's body out of the ground into a great rock that became the moon. Now Pau owned both the earth and the sky, and Yuri was entombed. Nashira saw what Pau had done, and she took him and trapped him in a moon beside Yuri and said, "My first son, you shall never again grow the seed of life on this barren rock." Then she took a pebble from Yuri's moon and a pebble from Pau's. She planted the stones in the human woman's womb, and the woman birthed. Out of Yuri's stone grew a golden angel of the skies, a dragon to guide and protect in Yuri's memory. Out of Pau's stone grew a monster. It would forever remind people of Pau's evil. Pau was the first Dason.
And we're back. Oh my goodness. Okay, I gotta unmute some people here. Allie and Shelly. One, I will say that video. Normally, I'm the one that's responsible for doing like the video work and all of that. I just did the sound stuff. Allie, you outdid yourself. That was wonderful.
Oh,
You and Shelly working
really
together
cool.
on that. I love that. That worked so well. Yeah, so we're saying hi to Allie. So Allie is our editorial director at Mythos Inc. She worked intimately involved with the creation of, or with the editing of Under the Lesser Moon. And I thought it would be good to bring the two of you on. Because there's some fun things that happen before I ask you some of the journey of type questions for this book. I want to give a contest reminder. Ask questions in the chat. Share this social media stream with all your friends and followers and all the rest. Both of those will get you contest entry for, of course, that really cool signed copy and those prints. I can put that on the screen here. So those prints and a signed copy of Under Lesser Moon, we will ship it straight to your door. And say hi to Emma in the chat because she's the one managing it there too. So for the two of you, first question. I got this one. Once you're done writing and editing a book and it's ready for publication, you start approaching agents and publishers. Shelly, can you tell us about the process of querying this book and how you came to work with Mythos Inc.? What's that journey there?
It was a long journey. This was interesting because this is my debut novel and it's one of the first novels I ever wrote. So I didn't have a lot of experience when I was writing it. I hadn't really developed my craft. It was a lot of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. And even if it didn't stuck, I didn't necessarily take it out. It was a lot of just experimental kind of discovery writing, just see where it goes, not a lot of plot. And I didn't have a lot of early critique partners either. So before I queried it, I sent it off to a developmental editor that's a good friend of mine, the whole series, because I wrote it in just one big, really long story till I was done. And just had no idea if it was good or bad. No one had had eyes on it. She was super helpful, helped tell me like where I should split it up. And then after that, I sent it to another developmental editor, just the first, what we were going to use as the first book, and started querying it after that. And the first place I queried was one of my favorite hometown publishers, and they only take they don't accept simultaneous submissions. So I just subbed it to one place and waited. Ended up getting a response back from them, and it was a good one, and they wanted to make an offer. So I was pretty thrilled and over the moon. And then I waited and waited, and it was a long wait. It was about a year. So in between then, I wrote another novel, kind of totally different one, and I found a bunch of other publishers that I would like to sub stuff to, and found Mythos and Ink. Wrote a short story as well, and I subbed my second novel that I wrote while I was waiting for the contract for this first one to Mythos and Ink. And Allison was really nice, personalized letter back saying really good, I liked it, but really not our cup of tea. And it's a kind of far out a story. And she said, do you have anything else? And I said, I'll only have this one other story, but it's kind of under offer right now. And after about a year of not getting a contract from the other place, I subbed it to Mythos and Ink and about 6 other places that had caught my eye. And got an offer from another place that had some red flags on it, and got an offer from you guys that I was really happy to accept.
I'm glad we're not red flags. I'm
Yeah.
glad. That
Yeah.
makes me happy.
I think it's really funny because she had subbed that first initial book to me, and I read it, and I'm like, oh, I really love this writing style, but like this book is just too dark for me. Like I don't think I can like get behind
You're noticing
it
a
in the way
trend.
that an editor should be. And then she subbed me this other one, and I'm like, this book is really dark too, but for some reason I like this darkness. I don't know what was the difference
Maybe she
between
whittled
them.
you down with the first one.
Wore you out, wore you
Yeah.
down.
Well, Allison, what was it about this book that made you want to work on it?
There's a lot of good things about it. Shelley's really good at just like drawing you into character and making you feel for the person that's narrating, as is not always so good when you're reading this story because lots of bad things happen to this character, and so you feel so bad for him. And then just like her writing style is really solid, and she has a handle over, word choice, and that's all ding ding dings for editors. And then it kind of sold it for me because I don't think I didn't accept it right away. I think I made a big outline for you and asked for some revisions first. And then when she sent them to me, I'm like, oh, she can take revision notes and knows how to work with someone else. So this is great. So yes, I want to work with her.
Well, okay, so that's made Shelley feel good. All right, so
Thanks.
so what was it like working with Allison on the editing side? You got sent for revisions. You got some things changed in your books. You got, you're told like, it's not quite there yet. Things like that. What were some of maybe the best parts and worst? No, you know what? If you have worst parts, start with those. We'll end with the best parts. But what was it like working with Allison?
There's worst parts. I think one of the most difficult parts was I knew going in, I knew that there was something not right with the book. I knew it had potential. It had been through some sets of eyes, but I just couldn't figure out what it needed to get it to where it was a good book. And I knew it had potential, but that's all it was. It was still fairly rough. So when Ali sent me the revisions, it was this beautiful spreadsheet of like, what if you did this, 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 and this by chapter by chapter? And it was like this eureka moment. It was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it needs. So for me, it was getting that revision notice. I had decided even before you sent the offer that I started making the changes as soon as I got those revisions, because it was like, whether they take this or not, these are the changes I need to make in this book to make it better. So I'm glad we went with you, because otherwise I was going to steal your wonderful revision notes and use them anyways.
It's always a risk you take.
So it was fantastic. It was like, I'm pretty directionless. I don't have a good compass, road-wise or story-wise. So it was amazing. It was like getting handed this map saying, hey, this is what you need to do to get it where you want to go.
Really does sound like you'd be a terrible pirate at this point.
Yeah, and pilot, to be honest.
One more question, then we'll get into perhaps the reading here. But can you talk about how some of the characters, I know some were gender swapped. And changing characters can be a big thing to an author because you've grown attached to these people. What were some of the characters that were gender swapped? What was the story behind that, and what was the purpose for doing so? And this is open to both of you because I'm sure both of you had a hand in that.
I guess I started that conversation because I was reading the book and I sent an email to Shelley asking her, is this a male-dominated society? She was like, no. And I was like, okay, then we need to maybe change some of these characters because there's just a lot of male characters, which I think writers from our Western society just tend to do automatically without thinking about it. And so I'm like, okay, well, what if we just, instead of trying to make this character or add in new characters, what if we just swap this character and make him a girl and just leave in all the not change anything else other than that. And we did that with a couple characters, and I think it really worked. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Shelley? How was that experience for you?
I think it was really interesting because, like you said, there's some biases that you have I have anyways, as a writer that I didn't even recognize I have until we started changing those roles. Like one of them we changed, it was a woman in the caregiver role and a healer, and we changed it to a man. It was like, well, why wouldn't they be in the caretaker roles? Things like that. They live in a society where, like we said, they're supposed to be worshiping this powerful goddess deity, so there'd better be some powerful female role models in there.
Yeah.
Or are they really following that goddess? So it was a great kind of wake-up call, and it was fun to revise that way and reimagine them as different but the same characters.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some great questions. I've got a ton of questions here that I hope we can get to later, but I see a ton of questions. Emma's been messaging me, and my phone is going crazy of everybody that's throwing messages in the chat. We're going to do that at the end. We've got a good Q&A at the end. Keep those questions coming in. I'm really excited to ask some of them. But we actually want to share the book with you. And so, Shelley, I think I'll switch it down to just you and me. Why don't you introduce a little bit of the section that we're going to read? Because we're not reading page 1. We're reading a little bit further in. So maybe set that up for me and for everybody that's watching.
All right. So in this scene, we're going to meet our main character, Christ, his estranged mother, Ayala, and you'll hear me mention vias. So think like ostrich or prehistoric terror bird mixed with a reptile, and they use them as pack animals here. And in the scene we're about to read, we're going to join Christ. He's a firstborn son in a tribe of about 20 people. He's 11 years old, and he's been shunned for most of his life. His father provides him with just the bare essentials to live. His mother pretty much avoids him completely, and he's out foraging near his camp when he finds a dragon scale in the grass. And now dragon scales are kind of considered like sacred relics reserved for their leaders, or they call them speakers in their tribes. So that's kind of where we're joining in.
Oh man, I'm excited for this. I remember when I was reading the scene in this book, it definitely shot out to me as one of the more powerful scenes of. You could feel the richness behind it all. So I'm excited to hear. I'm just going to hear you read it to me and to us. So make sure you've got your water. You're ready to go.
All set.
All right, I'll turn it over to you. So by all means, Shelley Campbell's Under the Lesser Moon.
I found the dragon scale wedged among a patch of Kiro grass. We valued Kiro for its sweet scent, using it for bedding and incense. Alone on the hillside, cutting and bundling swaths of grass, I paused when a patch of sunlight winked at me from deep within the turf. Tilting my head, I squinted at the flat disk of gold about the size of my palm, ridged and flecked with brown. My chest tingled. I swallowed, clenched my fists, and pinned them to my sides. Don't touch it. Hassav had drilled that into me enough times. Scales belong to Nodular. If you ever find one, don't touch it. Come and get me, he had said. I couldn't understand why scales were so special if dragons just shed them like peeled off toenails, and I said so. Have you ever seen a dragon? Hassav had asked. No. When I was your age, I'd already seen more than I could count with both hands. My father told me that in his youth, the sky was sometimes so full of them, it looked more gold than blue. Camps had more speakers than they ever needed, and dragons guided them away from storms and towards finest hunting grounds. He sighed. But guides are rare now, and so are their scales. It's my fault, I thought, swallowing guilt, like everything else is. My father wouldn't come out and say it, but the creation story spelled it out well enough. Dragons were good, worms were evil, and the two didn't mix. As a descendant of Pau, a brother of worms, I hadn't seen a dragon because my birth had driven them all away. And I'd killed my sister just like Pau killed Yuri. Dragons could probably smell evil on me. Hassav carried on. Scales are rare gifts from the guides to the speakers, amulets that provide protection and inspire wisdom. Then he'd mumbled sourly, Nashira knows the man needs it. I don't think he'd meant for me to hear that last part. The elders whispered that Najalar's older sister was more suited to lead, but Nashira chose as she wished, and she'd chosen Najalar, not Arsu. I frowned at the scale nested in the grass. Vibrant gold with delicate veins of turquoise, it was stunning compared to the Vaya's gray scales. I was overcome with the urge to touch it. If I told Hassev about the scale, Najalar would add it to the stack on his necklace and never consider it again. How will he even know you touched it? I thought. That's as close as a guide as you're ever going to get. My tongue pressed through the gap of my missing front tooth. A swell of heat bloomed in my stomach as I bent and picked up the scale. It was lighter than I thought it would be. Sunshine blazed through its filmy width, and its surface glowed amber. I'd never seen a dragon, but I imagined that I was one now, soaring on gusting winds, crying in triumph at those pathetic earth-bound beings below. Closing my eyes, I tipped backwards. Air punched past my lips as my backside hit the ground. I relished the breeze against my face, held the scale over my heart, and flew far away from camp. I didn't remember falling asleep. A gasp woke me with a start. Someone's shadow blocked the sun. Raven hair whipped past her proud jaw and curled around her neck. Ayala, you're not supposed to be anywhere near her, I thought. But she towered over me with raw eyes and thin lips. I'd never seen my mother's pretty face so disfigured, so furious, so close. Swallowing, I sat up and gaped around me. The sun was low on the horizon, and behind my mother stood all the camp's gatherers and half the Vayas. They were returning from foraging in the south. I gulped and a shiver shot through me. You are to remain a respectful distance from your mother, Hassev had ordered. It was my duty as an eldest son to prevent situations like this. Why was she standing so close? To speak, to even look directly at her was blasphemy. Why didn't she step back? The sensation of an object pinching my palms snagged my breath in my throat as I remembered what I held. Oh no, sweet Nashira, Ayala was staring at the dragon scale. They all were. A moan crawled up my throat as I glanced at the lovely scale sandwiched between my dirty hands. I couldn't drop it, couldn't think. Hot tears scrambled down my face, and for a single moment, I met Ayala's gaze. She has brown eyes, I realized. I'd never been close enough to see their color. My mother reacted as if I'd burned her. Her whole body twitched. Jerking forward, she tore the scale out of my hands. The gatherers behind her yelped and the Vayas pranced and hissed, but I didn't make a noise as the scale sliced through the meat in my fingers. Ayala's eyes bulged at the hot blood smearing the sacred gift. Past the rushing in my ears, I heard the gatherers mumbling prayers. Fat drops of blood patted onto my lap from the cut on my fingers, but I barely felt the pain. I wanted to apologize, to say something, but a boulder had settled between my ribs. Ayala wailed. The jagged noise tore through the still air, and several Vayas rolled their eyes and cried a frantic echo. Hands shaking, my mother bent and wiped the scale on the front of her dress. Where my blood had smeared the gold, a marbled pink stain remained. She spun and sprinted down the hillside. The other gatherers snatched up their children and scuttled into the valley, with the Vayas bouncing behind them. Your dirty blood is smeared all over a speaker's gift, I thought, stomach sinking. They'll brand you for this.
Ooh. Tingles. Oh man, I love that. There's two parts of that struck me, because there's this moment where you describe flight. I'm not someone who would ever choose that as a superpower, but the way that you described it made me interested enough to want to give it a shot. And then immediately after, you talk about, this is the closest that I have ever seen my mother's face. And it was like, I'm on a roller coaster ride of emotion, Shelley. Stop. Oh, man. So that is just one of the very many scenes in Under the Lesser Moon. We are so proud of this work. It is available now. You can pick it up anywhere books are sold. You can head to our website, mythosinc.com. We have links down below. And we have links to where you can purchase that book and get it for yourself. And we would love for you to read it. And then, of course, when you do, leave a review, because that always helps us so much. We're bringing Allie back. Allie, thank you so much for editing that work and that scene and all the rest. We have some questions here from people in the audience. And I'm enjoying some of these questions. This one stood out to me. This one's going to be an easy one. It's going straight to Shelley with this one. Brittany, thank you for giving us this question.
Hi, Brittany.
She asked, do you draw your characters as you write, or do you draw them afterwards? Because this gives me a good way to go to the prizing. And show that back
Great
again.
segue. Brittany.
Right, yes.
Great, nice lead in. So the human characters I actually drew after because I was waiting as the story was getting queried and stuff like that. But the dragons that are in the story, I actually built, and this is nerdy, speaking of fiction for geeks, I actually built like this not full scale, very large clay posable dragon and made a bunch of art with it because when we get a little bit later on in the series, dragons are more up close and in your face than they are in this book. And I wanted to get like the mechanics right of what would it feel like, where would they be sitting if they rode them, what would it look like, their faces. And for me to visualize something that's totally imaginary and not a person, I had to have something there pictured in front of me because I'm not very visual, and that's why I do art, because I can't see it in my head. I need to see it on paper a lot of the time.
I think you need to build a life-size version of this. I mean, for research. For research.
And he'll win the dragon bracket for sure.
Oh, man. Some more questions have been rolling in here, too. Robert says this. What drew you to exploring the story as dark fantasy?
Well, my parents can probably tell you all my fantasy has had a bit of a bent of dark to it. They got called into the school when I was like in grade 4 or 5. I think it was grade 6 maybe. And the language arts teacher was like, she's doing it again. It's this wrote like a really dark story and it's really realistic and we're kind of concerned. And I remembered my parents being like, why do you keep doing that? It's like creeping out your teacher. And I told her, you know what? Not all endings are happy endings.
Oh, wow.
Disturbing, creepy child. This ending is a happy ending, I promise. But unfortunately, it seems like I just tend towards some dark writing. I think it's because I have never had a lot of darkness in my life, so it's fun to explore something I've never had to experience at all. I've lived a pretty happy, jovial, light life.
That's fun. How many of us have been in a situation where they ask, like, well, what's the worst thing you did when you were in school, or what did you get in trouble for? It's not many that said, yeah, I wrote some pretty dark stuff. And
disturbing my teachers.
Parents were called on multiple occasions. This is a fun one. This one's from Deborah. How did you come up with the fabulous title? And part B is, what were some of the titles that were in contention at one point? This was not the original title. Under the Lesser Moon was not the original title. So why don't we, Shelley, you start with what the original title was and what you were thinking with that, and then Allie, you can talk about how we crafted into something else.
The original title was The Damned Sons, and it was a placeholder because I wasn't sure what else to name it. And it was a story where we're centering on a firstborn son who's cursed and whose people considered them to be damned. So,
yeah, and so Mythos and Ink has a process that we go through for all the books that we go through, which includes brainstorming, and we have like a specific method that Kyle has developed as our marketing director.
Really cool.
And then we market test a few different titles and then see which one does best, and then we usually go with that one. So actually, the series name, The Marked Sun, was actually in contest to win the title of this book, and then we decided that made a better series title, and ended up going with Under the Lesser Moon because it's I don't know, everyone seemed to like it the best. And actually, I am planning a blog post in the next couple of months that goes through our exact process of titling books. So if you want to read that and learn exactly how we do it, stay tuned.
It was fun.
I can add as well. So we also do market research. So what we do is, when we've developed a lot of these titles, we put them all out and we kind of craft them and make sure that they're at least workable. And then we blind test them to people. So part of that is me going on the street and literally talking to people. It's harder now that COVID. Now it's like random people on forums. But in in
I want to be a fly on the wall where you're just wandering up to people on the street and saying, "What do you think of this title?"
I love doing that at coffee shops. That being said, because you have to do it somewhere. I want to Anyways, that whole thing aside, we also have a group that we use to market test, and if you want to be a part of that group, our patrons are one of the places that we go to do that. So patreon.com/mythos and ink. So subtle half plug. But what we do is we give you all these titles and we ask you a whole bunch of questions like, which one do you like better? Which one do you like worse? If you were to rank them, things like, okay, so what do you think would be in this book if we wrote this? And I know for Under the Lesser Moon, there were some conversations around the word moon, and we were really concerned, like, this isn't a werewolf story.
Yeah, we're a little bit concerned about that. But you know what? Werewolves don't own the moon. They don't own that symbol. So.
Right. And so it was very important for us to not have, like, on the cover, because this works into the title, right? Of, like, not having the black cover with the moon and the disc, because that's so werewolfy.
Wolf howling.
Yeah. All of that stuff. And we're like, we have to have dragons somewhere on the cover to really indicate that there's so much when it comes to Deborah. That was a wonderful question, and I'm glad I got to answer one. So thank you. Cynthia, she says, how long did it take you to write your first draft, and how long until you had the finished book? Oh man, that's a big one.
That is a big one. The first draft I was toying with this since like high school. I put it down when my kids were born. I picked it back up again. It was a long time. I can't remember when the first draft was.
So this was your very first book, which is actually a really common thing for writers to take quite a long time on their very first book. And then once they get that published, they kind of have to learn to write to a deadline. So I guess we'll see how you do on that.
Fingers crossed.
So far, I mean, I've already seen how you do on that. You do great. So
as long as you don't go all Patrick Rothfuss on us, I think we're okay.
You know what? He doesn't owe anyone.
Just wanted to come out. It leads into, now that I mentioned Patrick Rothfuss, Tim had a question that said, what are other fantasy writers that inspire you?
Oh, I've got a lot of them. Well, some of the ones that we use for comparison, Jane Owl, for sure. I read a bit of that. Back in junior high school, it was Anne McCaffrey and the Dragon Riders of Pern series really got me into that. Fascination with a complex connection between people and dragons, and how could you play with that?
People have been a little bit peeved with us for using that as a comparison.
Because Anne's not dark.
No.
Also because the dragons aren't huge in this book, and I think that comparison will be more apparent in the next one. So we'll maybe use it more.
I promise you'll get up close and personal with a dragon in the coming books.
Speaking of, Sam has a question. How many books are you planning for this series? And I think that can kind of lead into, this book wasn't just one book.
No. This book was originally, when I finally just said, okay, you got to chop it up, it's way too huge. And I thought naturally trilogy, because of course, that's what you do with fantasies. It's got to be a trilogy. So it was originally going to be a trilogy. We ended up taking the first two books, which were pretty meandering and had a lot of issues with pacing, and putting them in the one book. So it's going to be a duology, but there could be more books in that universe that don't center on the same characters.
Well, it depends on how many people buy these books.
It does.
From the marketing guy.
Could be nothing if we don't get any books bought. This could be it.
But I need the next book.
So support.
Well, we've got at least one more coming out. That's we have to have that. And when you get to the end of this book, you will feel the same way.
Yes.
You have to have at least one more book. Not giving anything away, but this is a solid story. I think one of the other questions that I had, what was the one that I was interested in, subplots that didn't quite make the final cut. Like, we talked about paring things down. Mm-hmm. What's still down there on the floor that never is going to may see the light of day, but isn't going to see the light of day for this book now?
Well, I've got one, so I'll go first. So Shelley needs time to think about it. So we pared two books down into one. So there were a lot of scenes that we had to let go of. Generally, you always ask yourself, does this push the plot forward at all? And if it doesn't, then it needs to go. even if you love it so much, which can be really hard. So one of the scenes that was hard for me was there's a point where a Christ finds this. This isn't too spoilery, is it? No. He gets to see a worm. They're those giant worm creatures.
The giant worm creatures from the ground.
Attack.
Yeah.
And they find like a dead one, and the hunters like had thrown spears in it, and the spear goes like thunk into its stomach, and they find out that this worm has been eating like trees because it's just so hungry, and it can't really digest them, but it just eats them anyway. And I found that really interesting, and I really liked that scene, but we had to cut that one.
Shelley, what for you? What was some of the things that hit the cutting room floor that you didn't that won't necessarily see the light of day?
Mine were it wasn't any one scene in particular, but there was a lot of cool hunting scenes where I liked, where you got to see a Chris kind of in his element, where he finally was fitting in at some point in his life where he was really good at something, and some of the scenes where he's with the hunters were pretty cool, but like Ali said, they didn't really forward the plot, and it doesn't make sense to keep them in just because it's a cool hunting scene.
Yeah.
That'll go in the TV show montage.
Yeah.
the hunting scene montage.
There are some hunting scenes that stay.
Yes.
Not all of them.
Oh man. Well, we're getting closer to 9 o'clock, and I think we should wrap it up here. But we do have people who have been asking questions. We have people who have been sharing the stream and tagging us in it. So I'm gonna bring Emma back. Let me find the right scene. Here we go. Emma's back. Hey, Emma. Emma's going to announce our contest winner for the oh so amazing, the signed copy of the book, as well as the 2 prints that is going to be sent straight to your door. Emma, I'll let you take over. Oh, you're muted. Of course. We can't have a call. You're muted. There you go. Yes.
Magic of technology, my voice appears. All right, so thank you everybody so much for entering, for all of your shares and your questions. That was awesome. This giveaway was randomly decided by D20, so just rolled it, and the winner, drum roll, is Deborah Mayone. So Deborah, you have won a copy of the book signed by Shelley, as well as her fantastic artwork. Thank you again everybody for entering, and congratulations, Deborah.
That's awesome.
Yay.
Once again, you can get Shelley Campbell's Under the Lesser Moon today. Anywhere that books are sold. If it's not in your local bookstore, you can ask them to order it. They certainly have it on their distribution list. All of that has gone out. You can get it in ebook form. You can get it on your online retailers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters Indigo should be there in a few days and things like that. You can find it on our website, mythosinc.com. Just look for Under the Lesser Moon. Shelley, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ali and Emma, thank you so much for going so much behind the scenes work and the work that you guys did on the book too. And of course, to everybody who hung out with us today. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
love you all.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.